Welcome to another episode of TechUnhinged, where we dive into the raw, unfiltered world of technology, innovation, and the incredible people driving the change. I'm Usher, and today we're exploring why LLMs are cybersecurity's next frontier. Joining me is one of the most influential voices in cybersecurity, Matthew Rosenquist. Hello, Matthew.
Hello, pleasure to be here. Should be a great conversation.
Great, awesome. So, Matthew, just for our guest, Matthew is a Chief Information Security Officer. He has served in the past as cybersecurity strategist at Intel, and is a trusted advisor to many Fortune 500 and governments worldwide. With over 30 years of hands-on leadership, he has keynoted on international stages, published several cybersecurity predictions that kind of shape how the industry think of. We look forward to having a conversation with him, and it's great to have you on the podcast as well. All
The
right.
pleasure.
So starting off, Matthew, you are the voice that, shapes the cybersecurity industry. So where do you intentionally kind of target your influence towards, or who do you think, these are the people that should really be understanding what's going on nowadays?
Yeah, I focus on the strategic picture, really looking towards the emerging risks and threats. And that's important to everybody in our industry. And what we see in the news today actually began weeks or months ago. What's really important is what's coming at us tomorrow. And that's
Okay.
where I focus.
Okay. So it's more like you're trying and to get towards a broader ecosystem, right? So not only inside the organizations or companies or governments, but largely overall in the broader ecosystem.
Absolutely. So you've got cybersecurity leaders, you've got operators, you've got planners, you've got technologists, developers, all of these things, including service providers and vendors that deal in technology, digital technology, they all need to see what's kind of coming forward so that they can better prepare and defend their products, their services, their environment, and their customers.
We see that more is less is becoming more of a mainstream mindset. So people are starting to understand that concept really well. Do you think there's still a belief or cybersecurity belief or practice that the industry kind of still gets wrong despite all the progresses that we've made?
Yeah, I'll give you three, right?
Awesome.
The first one being how important the basics in cybersecurity are. We often forget that, or we don't get that right, or we don't stay persistent. The second one is that security is not just a technology problem to be solved. There are many other things around that, around process, around people, around intelligent threats. And the third thing is that we don't actually eliminate risk. I know a lot of people want to think the cyber team does. We make everything safe, but rather we actually manage risk to an optimal level, which means there is going to be some pain. That's part of the design, and we want that, right? Everybody actually wants that, but we don't eliminate risk.
Okay, so basically, when there's so much hype, you kind of tend to forget the basics, right? So getting the basics right is still something that the industry at times is, just gets it wrong. That's what you're saying. Besides, and that's one point, and the other being that it's never just the policies. A lot of time it's the human behavior that really has to be addressed in the long term.
Yes, both on our side, but also in understanding there are humans on as our
The other thing,
adversaries.
yeah, yeah.
So it's not just a tech problem. Tech problem, you can go in, figure out the root cause, solve it, and then it's gone. In
Yeah.
my world, that's not the case. The moment you fix that, the attacker sees and goes around or over or under, and it never really goes away
Yeah.
because the attacker's still
So
there.
they have to be right just once. You have to be right every time, right? So
Yes.
that's the, that's the philosophy.
And they may
Uh,
be more persistent than you. They
yes.
may have more resources than you. They may be smarter than you. They
Yeah.
may know your environment better than you.
Yeah.
So it's never a fair fight. And, we shouldn't expect that that is.
And now they have this all intelligent human being. Oh, not a human being. Sorry,
Now
all
they have
intelligent,
AI.
all intelligent LLM as well. That that's like supposed to have infinite intelligence in its own self. So that's another new challenge. So yeah, we'll get to that. And actually, my next question is around that. So we've
Mhm.
we've we've spent decades, right? So securing infrastructure,
Yes.
securing access rights, securing identity frameworks, networks, applications. With the LLMs coming up, what do you think has changed? I feel that there's a completely new security problem that has now emerged. What are your thoughts?
So I'll be a little controversial here.
Okay.
The LLMs, in my opinion, aren't really a problem per se. And let me explain that,
Okay.
right? They're simply a tool that helps with communication. It's an interface to control other AI systems, and it's a means to communicate with computers via code and other people. So it is a tool, it's an interface tool, but the real risk is when we have AI agents that are granted permissions and have the ability to access and change and manipulate and orchestrate in our digital world, like Agentic AI. LLMs are an interface to those, but it's not the root of the problem. It's just another communication interface.
Right, but there have been researches that simple prompt injections can override system instructions and whatnot.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. But again, there it really isn't security through obscurity. So you do
Mhm.
need to have the knowledge. And whether you're going to Wikipedia, whether you're grabbing someone else's code off GitHub, whether you're just putting in a plain prompt into an LLM and having it go do all of that, it's not the interface tool that's the real big problem. It does expose and lower the bar to a whole new set of attackers. That's true. But the fundamentals is still what access does it have, right? What does it gain when it gets access to that vulnerability? The real risk is the vulnerability. We normally have problems when we're communicating or interfacing, and whether it's a computer, right, through an LLM, or whether it's just a human. I may use social engineering and find a great way of communicating to you that you give me your password, right? So it's not necessarily the communication interface, it's the vulnerability that it's going after and how well it can exploit that.
Right.
That's really where the biggest risk becomes.
Got it. Okay. So, but let's say tools like ChatGPT, Claude,
Mhm.
Cowork specifically, or Code CLI or something. So I feel has made those decisions very trivial. So for instance, I've recently started using Claude a lot in the last 6 months, right? And it
Okay,
keep asking
okay.
me, can I have permission to do this? Can I have permission to do this? Now I'm a little bit of techie myself, right? So I can understand what it's asking me to do. I can just say no, but I have friends who are in organizations who are working in enterprises. They have their laptops and everything, and they're like, go, 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 go. Okay, you're done. So that what you're saying is, I agree, right? So the whatever it has access to that becomes vulnerable. But at the same time, giving that access has become a trivial decision for somebody to yes,
Oh.
just say allow permissions for all, and boom. So that's
Absolutely. And that's the tension in the system, right? The value of these AI systems, whether it's LLMs or agentic or whatnot, is predicated on the access they have to sensitive data, right? And the ability
right.
for them to act on it. And we want the greatest possible value of these tools. That's something we want. So it's very easy to say, I'm just going to give you all my permissions and just tell you what to do when you're going to go do it. And in a perfect world, that's wonderful. The problem is these tools are new,
Right.
and there are new tools, new capabilities, new features coming out every single day. So there's very little stability. And with that rush of these new tools and features and competitiveness, security is an afterthought. So security is
Right.
not built into these tools.
Correct.
And now you've just given them out of convenience and out of productivity needs, right? You've given them all your permissions.
Yeah.
So that's the equivalent of giving the brand new intern on their first day, and they don't know anything, giving them administrative privileges and keys to the safe. Now, you wouldn't do that to a new intern,
Right.
but we
Right.
see technology and go, oh, well, of course, because I want you to be productive. So
Right.
part of it is the problems in our own head, the expectations and understanding that these are not by default secure. They were not made to be secure by default. They were made to be functional. Just like when you grant it permissions, you are doing it for functional reasons. You're not thinking about the security consequences.
Correct. Yes. And that kind of reinforces the earlier point that you were saying that it's three things though, right? So getting the basics right. So and then also teaching humans both sides, right? So this side as well that hey,
Yes.
the basics right being you can't just give it blind permissions, understand or train your people to understand what it's asking for and that's where the safety come in. But generally we do see that language as a vulnerability is something that now it's getting more traction, right? So prompt injections,
Yes.
talking in simple natural languages versus me knowing what an SQL injection attack is or what an DOS attack, DDoS attack is, and so on and so forth. So it's just kind of become relatively easier there. So it makes your job harder.
It definitely lowers the bar from that
Yeah,
perspective.
yeah,
And it also accelerates the speed that you're going to get results. And that's going to work on both sides, right? It's not just the attackers. Right now, it's the attackers finding those vulnerabilities. As we get further into the year, we're seeing better and better IT tools for the security people, and it's going to be the exact same tools. If
right.
the attacker can say, find a vulnerability in this code, well, the defender can, and the developer can too ahead of time. And if we get there first, we can identify it and close that vulnerability.
Correct. So the
So it
risk,
becomes a race. It's an
yeah.
escalation.
I agree. Yes. So the real risk is kind of moving beyond the model now because LLMs are connected to multiple systems. So maybe
Mhm.
that's where attackers get a pathway to influence those external systems. I guess that's part of the problem as well. But
Yeah,
those are interesting.
especially when we look at agentic systems,
Yeah.
because now your AI
Correct.
or your agent, you want them to connect to every possible, other system they can. Again, the value is predicated on its access to sensitive data and systems, and it might be your bank account, it might be your work, domain login, it might be your email account, your calendar, all these different things.
Yeah.
And for it to give its maximum value, it needs access to all that. But you better be prepared and make a good, intelligent decision
No,
on whether you want
absolutely.
to accept that
Uh,
risk at the same time.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about agentic AI as well. But one thing that kind of stems from what I've the one trend, and I'm sure you would know it much better, is that what I'm seeing is that cybersecurity within organization, within businesses, absolutely. That was always a challenge, there's still a challenge and everything. But cybersecurity for individuals that were just using their laptops, but now are using their laptops with LLMs and integrated, that trend, that risk, has kind of skyrocketed because now every
Yes.
other guy, like you said, is connected their systems even and doesn't know how to protect them.
Yes, and the LLMs, especially when ChatGPT hit the scene, everybody started using it. Just like everybody uses Google or Wikipedia or
Yes. Yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah.
And there was an incremental risk in specifically data exposure because somebody, again, not knowing, may put social security numbers or those
Correct.
HR records or the next business deal
Yes.
in there and ask for revision. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, that then became exposed and searchable and part of the
Yeah.
training. And so there were some privacy issues around that. But overall, it was actually kind of small
Okay.
because one person going through an interface can only upload so much, right? Whereas attacker hitting your entire database, they can siphon everything off.
Just
And the type of people that were doing that weren't very well trained to begin with. They were willing to do that for an email or for a text message, right? Or
right.
some
Right.
other tool that they may have downloaded or used. So the behavioral weakness was really the problem there for most of it when we looked at the first introduction of LLMs.
Right.
But now, as you're connecting those LLMs and especially agentic systems to your backend systems, and they have permissions to the entire database, or you've established an MCP to expose that to the world because your API isn't good enough in bleeding data, right? Now the problem has become amplified exponentially. And now that really hits the radar about everything that we have to worry about in
Yeah.
cybersecurity.
That's a good sentence. API leading data. So connected and
Yeah, if you thought APIs were risky, stand by. MCPs are your nightmare.
that's
It's
true.
it's a dream. It's a cloudy, wonderful
Absolutely.
dream for the attackers. It's everything they would have asked for.
Correct, correct.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
No authentications, very loose connections and whatnot, right? So
We'll even tell you what we have
yeah,
access to.
yeah,
We'll
yeah.
self-announce. We'll guide you. Yes.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's true. That is true. There's one other thing I was just reading the other day, actually a couple of months back, actually, and then you just mentioned data, so that thought just occurred to me. I was just reading that training data can be poisoned, right? So at scale in terms of cybersecurity and everything. I never really saw it from that perspective. And then I thought how vulnerable this can really be. And now that I'm talking to you, I would love to put that question to you.
Yeah, so poisoning data, and really we're talking training data.
Yes, correct.
It's always been one of the risks that have been on the table. Even early on, when deep learning first came out, and even before that with machine learning, the security community said, hey, this is one of the problems. Now, the industry actually has taken note. The developers of these systems have taken note, but it's really important to understand that it's a little different than our perspective. They look at poisoning of data as a risk to the accuracy of the result that their tool is producing. That's great, that's valid. Okay.
Right.
But from my perspective, the security perspective, and you may not like this, I don't care whether the output is accurate. I really don't.
Yeah.
I care whether it creates a vulnerability to my backend system, whether it's going to expose data, whether it's going to bring down the system or reduce the availability. So I worry about those things, but the developers really aren't,
Yes.
right? As long as the output is accurate, they're done. They've won.
Yes.
But if that system, even though it's producing, accurate results, exposes the back end and allows an attacker to gain root access and own the company, that really isn't part of their engineering scope, right?
Right.
Their engineering scope, their goal was to make sure the LLM accuracy was there.
Yeah.
So we look at it from two different perspectives.
Okay.
Now, I would say, and as I've always said, training data is a foundation to the system, especially a system that can get around security controls. So you have to maintain control and security around the training data, especially if you're continuously learning. And
Okay.
if you're not, then yes, somebody can manipulate that, just like a SQL injection, right? If you're not controlling the inputs, then yeah, somebody can take over your database. The exact same fundamentals are
Right.
true when you're talking about AI systems. So if you don't have the proper guardrails, then yeah, they're going to be able to manipulate your system. It will become a vulnerability.
Right.
So there are security aspects beyond the accuracy of the output that are absolutely necessary. And it goes back to the basics, right?
Right.
Controlling that data, sensitive data, and the foundations of your code. Yeah,
Right.
that's a basic.
What kind of examples can we share? So how can that training data be manipulated or poisoned? So what can potentially happen? And then B, how do you typically prevent that? And, kind of how can you circumvent that?
Oh, it's a very long discussion
Okay.
because you can prevent it at the user, you can prevent it at the gateways, you can prevent it, as part of the input controls and validation, you can prevent it in, system memory and processing, you can detect it and block it as it's going outputs. I mean, there's tons of different ways of doing it.
Okay.
It's really about inputs and outputs at
Got
the end of the day. One of the things that we were concerned with at the very beginning is, again, you get those users that throw in, let's say, the HR records or something sensitive. Because the system is remembering that and then using that for further refinement of its output, it's in memory, it's resident there. And it may be capturing that and then integrating it into training that then becomes exposed to other users. Again, if you don't have the compartmentalization in place, right, the security
Right.
boundaries,
Right.
that data then may be able to be
Right.
reconstructed or exposed to other users that you did not intend that data to be. And
Right.
again, this is
Right.
back to the basics.
Back to the
We
basics.
saw this with simple web pages,
Yeah.
where back in the day when you would go to your bank and look up your account, right, some other user would go into the URL and just change one number and they would get to see somebody else's account. The simple guardrails there need to be in place. SQL
No.
injection, same thing. You have to guard against what you're allowed, right? What the user is allowed to input that the system will process.
Yeah.
Same thing with LLMs. So a lot of these problems aren't new. It's just a new, more complex tool that has a greater risk if it's manipulated and used against you.
Yeah.
So that's where the urgency comes from.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. And I agree with we are going back a little bit with these MCPs, with these prompt injections, with this Working with MD files just reminds me of the good old. So yeah, no, I agree with that. Coming to agentic AI now, we talked a little bit about it, when models start acting. So LLMs evolving from passive responders to now autonomous agents deployment within the systems. How does the risk profile change overall?
Okay, so we go from LLMs where you do have a slight increase of some exposure of a limited amount of data, right?
Yeah.
That's an inconvenience. It is. Out of all the security things we have to worry about, that user was going to do this anyway. This is just the tool that they ended up using it with. So it's a little inconvenience. We move from that to a system that can expose everything, destroy everything, bring the company to a state that it is no longer recoverable or viable. So we go from a pinprick or a sliver
Hmm.
to a catastrophic emergency room kind of situation. It is the situation we've been warning about for many, many years. AI is not new. So we've been warning about this capability for many, many years, and it's the greatest risk that we're going to face in the next several years around all of this.
Again, back to basics, I'm guessing, right? So have more access controls, making sure the agents are not able to access to the data, they're not able to talk to each other. So I was reading this research from Google DeepMind, and that was saying, and it was kindly, kind of addressing is that this could be a potential systematic vulnerability across all agentic systems,
Mhm.
unless it's addressed.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll take it even a level higher than that, right? It is a behavioral and cognitive, a social and business risk. Now,
Right.
here's the thing. AI is amazing. We all know that. It's even more amazing than we can imagine. And it is incredibly powerful, right? We want this. We need this. And so there is tremendous momentum to embrace this. And that same momentum is to make it better every single day. There are financial, right, incentives to embrace this, to use this, and to evolve this. And that is a tremendous push. We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars, if not
Yep.
trillions of dollars of
Yep.
value. So
Yep.
that is great momentum moving forward.
Right.
So, as a security person, right, one of the worst things we can do is tell everybody, oh, just stop and let's secure it first, because that's not going to happen, right? We're just going to get steamrolled. It
Right.
was the same thing when cloud emerged, and we tried to tell everybody, stop, it's not secure, which it wasn't. Let's just wait until it's secure. No. And they just rolled over the top of us, and there were problems. Same thing when World Wide Web, right? Wait, it's not secure. So, we as security professionals need to understand we can't stop this train. It's going a million miles an hour. Instead, we need to work with it. We need to ride that wave. And instead of saying, no, stop, we need to say yes, but let's put the guardrails in as we're doing this.
Right.
So security needs to adapt and understand and accept that AI is moving forward with us or without us, and we want it to
Right.
be with us. So we need to move at the same speed
The same
and
speed
see
and the
the
same
same
thing.
value and enable those use cases that are important. We need to be on the front end, not on the back end, saying, okay, what did you deploy? Now I've got to go secure it. We will never keep pace with that. So we need to be in the forefront, looking ahead and working as closely as possible with all those developers, with all those users, with all those third parties and service providers, right? We want to help make it successful. And if we're seen in that way, and that's where we're allocating our resources, that's where we're going to get the biggest bang from the
Yeah.
security buck,
Yeah.
right? And help get those fundamentals in place
Yeah.
early versus having to clean them up later.
No, absolutely. And yes, I think that's agreeable. So right, so back in the day we used to teach people, one of the traditional cybersecurity training was that hey, do not click on suspicious links. Do not
It's
open
still valid, by
suspicious.
the way. Don't say it's old. People will think, oh, I don't need to worry about that. No, it's
No, but
still
it's
important.
still
Basics,
valid.
basics.
Yes, basic. So now we have to figure out the exact same analogies for how to chat with an AI, how to talk to AI, and what not to do on an AI. So those kind of, I'm guessing similar training materials would need to be set up for there as well.
Yes. So again, we talked about how powerful AI is. Well, the attackers out there, the fraudsters, the cyber criminals, they realize it and they've adopted it. They are
Yeah.
adopting it much faster than us for
Right.
their purposes, right? To
Yeah.
commit better fraud, better phishing, better scams, better. And so we are kind of behind on the security side there because they get to adopt radical new tools even before they're tested. So, and we can't in security. We have to wait until something is polished and tested. I can't implement a tool that will bring down the environment. So there's a certain lag. They can because, oh, if it breaks, whatever, I don't care, right? I'm trying to do harm anyway. So let me maximize the benefit out. So they're an early adopter, we're a late adopter.
Oh,
So
that's good.
there's a lag.
This,
But because it's so powerful,
Mhm.
they can use it especially for social engineering. And we're seeing that. Even by the end of last year, over 80% of all social engineering attacks, think phishing and things of that sort, had some benefit of AI. The attackers were using AI to make it more
Yep.
powerful.
Yep. This just came in 2 days ago. I've forgotten, but Anthropic is calling they have a new model, which
Hmm.
actually, they have a new model, which actually, they didn't launch it. It broke containment and it broke
Yes.
the guardrails, which is the reason they did not launch it. And I was like, okay, Skynet is probably now coming. As- there's another interesting fact. It's slightly off topic, but I've noticed there's no good movie about AI.
We're
You
living it, Ashar. We're living it.
but you have Terminators and Skynet. You have that Ultron in Avengers that was bad.
Uh-huh.
Coming back to this breaking guardrails, and so there's one. What I also feel is the amount of now data that is more public, right? So, for instance, you're talking to your bank's AI co-pilots. Open
Hmm.
up Bank of America, and you have that. What do they call the Erica? I think they call it Erica. And you ask her that, hey, what's my balance for today? You're looking at XYZ dollars. Can I pay my credit card? Yes, of course. How much did it go there? 600 went there. What was my latest, biggest expense? Why 600 or whatever? And, it tells me XYZ, and all of that is going. Now, imagine if Bank of America is integrated to, one of the open models or the public models, and this kind of information, okay, it was in PDFs or emails, but not really out like this, right? So, what is your thought on public or these cloud models versus private models, right? So maybe Bank of America having a private model that they set up on their on-prems and whatnot.
It's wonderful from a security perspective in
Right.
principle, right? It's going to be on-prem. We're going to put guardrails. It's going to be in its own VM and controlled by a separate VMM. I mean, yes, 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 it'll be fine. But it goes back to that discussion of value.
Mhm.
Imagine going instead to your Bank of America webpage and talking with Erica or whatever. And if she didn't have access to any sensitive information, she wouldn't be very valuable, would she?
Correct.
Right? You wouldn't be able to ask what my balance is because she wouldn't
Yeah,
know. She
because
would go, "Hey, you got to log in." Well, that's not good, right? So, okay, well, we want to make it valuable to the user. That's the most important thing,
correct.
functionality.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that means we have to connect it to the back end. Erica has to be able to see everybody's balances. Oh, okay. So again, it's that tension in the system. We could make AI secure, but it wouldn't have any connectivity, which means it would have a very low value. The drive and the importance of AI and the power of AI is because we want it to have great value. Therefore, we have to now connect it to all these sensitive systems. And when we talk about jailbreaking, again, you can put it in an area that's controlled, but as people start using it, right, the value goes down. And almost immediately the input will be, I need it to do X or Y. I need it to have more power, more power. And we're giving it more power. We've given it enough power now that it has the ability to jailbreak itself.
Yep.
So we don't want the
That
jailbreak, but is that
we
really the
want the
most
power.
important thing? No, we want it to be powerful so it can provide tremendous value to the end user. So if
Right.
you can imagine people sitting in a room and the security person going, "Oh no, we need to limit the power." And the business person goes, "No, we can't do we need to expand the power." So do whatever you need to do, security, but don't limit us. Don't restrict access. Don't restrict data, right? Well, then I can't do anything. Well, that's okay. We'll deal with it later. And that's what happens.
Yeah. But the
So,
Yeah, the counter to that is, and interestingly enough, this came up when I was talking to one of our clients. They were very hesitant towards, sharing their data with OpenAI or Claude or Anthropic or anybody. And they kind of asked me that, hey, how do we prevent them using our data for training their models as well? That because that's the other problem, right? So there's this
Hmm.
cybersecurity challenge as well. But and I said there's this button in settings which I turn off, and then I say, do not share my data or do not train my model. So I can do that and hopefully we're good, right? But then she was like, do we trust them and whatnot? I was like, you already have AWS, you're using AWS with us. If all of your data is already with them. I mean, it's the same behavior. It's just that it's another company that has now come and is asking for access to your data. So, it's simple. It's not that big of a risk. And eventually, yes, if you absolutely want to be sure, deploy an on-prem model, set it up, in-house, do not use any of this, but then you don't know how that open source model is even working because, you would then have to have it vetted through, going through all those penetration testing, whatnot, and having audits
Sure.
and all of that stuff done. So yeah, it's I see that as a real challenge with organizations because in the bigger scheme of things, this data is their moat now. This is what their proprietary IP and the value addition would come in from, where they have this very specific data to their industry, to their vertical that they're working in, and making sure that it stays with them. So it's going to be interesting times, the way I see.
Very much so, right? Even if you did want to contain it and not, for me or for the industry to even test that model to see if it's actually doing what it's doing and it can't be exploited or there's vulnerabilities in it, it would take so long to test it. The next new model's already out, or the next
Yeah,
two new models. And of course, the users want gonna jump to those and jump to those.
right.
So we don't even have time to test if that was your intention and you were willing to do that. And that also means you're willing to limit the functionality and the value. And right now, people aren't. We don't have the stomach to say, oh, no, absolutely. I want to limit my AI or my agent or what. I absolutely want to limit it. People don't. They want no limits. They want it to be able to do everything. They want it to be able to wake them up in the morning and make breakfast for them and clean their house and do all their work. So it's the intention and the motivation is more value, which means more access, which means more risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And companies like Anthropic and AI, OpenAI are investing a lot in alignment and red teaming, right? So
Yes.
you can't match that investment in your own private models. It's going to be very hard. But I don't know, eventually we'll have a solution or something. But yeah, that's a very interesting debate that we have ongoing with our clients and looking at different orgs and figuring out what's the best way to do it or not. I was looking at your top 10 cybersecurity threats in 2026 article. One of
Mhm.
the things that you highlighted was hyper-personalized, AI-driven social engineering at scale. I love to know what that means. And then we go to that.
It goes back to the social engineering, and I see them all the time because I love it. I love trying to be fished, right? It's just
Right.
a hobby, right? I want to understand traditionally, right? When you talked about cyber criminals and phishing or any type of social engineering, they had a challenge. They could either make a real generic attack and just widely distribute it,
Right.
right? And that's where you saw the real weak misspellings and it didn't sound right. And sometimes they got your name wrong, right? But they're able to distribute out to millions. So
Right.
they can either go very, very wide, but not very good, or they could focus their time on a particular target and make a very customized kind of attack and handhold it and make it real quality. But they couldn't do that to everyone. So it was kind of on a scale. Do I go broad or do I get really good? AI has completely blown that out of the water because now they can use AI to create very good customized, real interactive, real time, right, at machine speed, and now do that for mass numbers of people. And the customization can be wonderfully incredible. Good for them, bad for us,
Yeah.
right? I
Right.
got one in my inbox the other day, and they engaged me, and they had set their their AI to go off and look to do a search on me on Google and LinkedIn and pulled in a whole bunch of things. And 2 full paragraphs. It was flattering me, saying, hey, no, it's great what you do. And hey, you spoke at this conference and that really resonated with me. And it was very in-depth. Now, I was able to very, very quickly identify they had interpreted something slightly off, right? That a
Was
human
it
wouldn't. So
using
I knew it
indexing?
instantly that it was AI, but it was really well done. And they had hit several different typical cognitive vulnerabilities, right? Flattery and urgency and appeal to wealth, all these kinds of things. And then it started to get into what it wanted me to do. And I had noticed at the bottom they had put, this is my name and title and phone, but here's our company webpage. I'm like, oh, well, that normally isn't done. So I went and grabbed the URL, put it in a safe sandbox and launched it. And the company's webpage came up. It had a beautiful image of their headquarters with their name on it. And I start clicking through and it's got, its products and its marketing materials. And I go to the about page and it lists all of their executives, their founder and CEO, their co-founder, their all. And so I start clicking through and it goes to their LinkedIn page. All these people are synthetic. All the accounts are fake. All of them, right? The images were generated, the profiles were created. They created LinkedIn accounts that were completely fake, right? Every page on that web page was synthetic. And so I dive into the code and I actually found it was an AI tool that it's a legitimate tool that you can go and it will create your company web page for you. They had used that to create a fake web page to reinforce, right, the
Like how real it can be.
legitimacy of the phishing email, and I thought it was fantastic. I got giddy. I'm like, oh, this is awesome, right? And we're
Right.
gonna see that. We've got deep fakes coming. We've got synthetic web page, synthetic personalities, executives, right? Oh, I spoke at this, and they'll have a web page, or they will start feeding the news feeds out there, right? The
Right.
Googles of the world that indexes stuff so that, yeah, if I Google that, they did speak there. Why? Because they seeded that.
Right.
Right. And now that can all be automated. That used to take a nation
And
state
done.
level, a crew of 20 people to build all that, right? And do all that research and make sure the wording is correct in the correct language of your target and maybe even in a regional dialect, an accent, right? And then, yes, when you click on Let's Chat, it's going back and forth with you in real time. So it's amazing what it can now do to the benefit of the attackers. Are we prepared as potential victims to deal with that? Probably not. I mean, I enjoy it, I expect it, but I don't expect anybody else to dive that deep.
Yeah, I agree. So it's a 100 times evolved version of that Nigerian prince email that we used to get. None
Yes,
was there, right? So, and people fell for
absolutely.
that at that time because it was completely new. They didn't know and whatnot. This is like that, 1,000 times evolved version. But
Yeah.
it's crazy the amount of work it can do. The problem would be that this would eventually erode a lot of trust, right? So, I mean, what do I trust then? And
Hmm.
and the consequence of that is that even legitimate outreach, gets ignored because I just don't know what's the difference between the two. If somebody is a legitimate outreach versus like this, and it just becomes hard, really becomes hard. So I
It
guess
does.
as early on you could see those dashes and you would realize AI written, but now people have started to learn that you can give a prompt and make sure that there's no M dashes. Yeah, it's going to be hard, definitely, definitely. But
Yeah, we're going to have to learn new skills.
yeah,
And the
okay.
first piece of that is to simply assume that we can be manipulated,
It's
right?
not good.
Don't
Yeah.
we just can't trust it. Right now, we still believe in certain areas of trust.
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
It used to be way back in the day when you got an email, you assumed it was from that person, right? If it had their name. And then we learned, oh, it can be spoofed. So we didn't trust that. Originally, when photographs came out, they were definitive proof of reality. And then we realized when tools came out, to modify image or create images, okay, we can't trust that. And then, video. Nowadays, video, we trust it. It's video.
Yeah,
But now
but
we've
that's
got AI that can create video that we can't really discern whether it's fake or not. So we can't really trust that. Well,
Right.
oh, well, wait. What if we get on a phone call? I mean, you're talking with them.
That,
That you should be able to track, right? No, we've got deep fakes. Oh, what about a video? A video, video chat. No, we've got deep fakes for that too. So every time technology evolves, we have to reevaluate, right? And decide, can we trust that or can't we? We are at another pivotal point here where the things we thought were absolutely true in video and voice and in real-time engagement, we have to then step back and go, I'm not going to inherently trust that. There have to be other
what's
ways.
left then? Face-to-face meeting or physical meeting?
A handshake actually is pretty good. But, and that's just to make sure it's not AI. You may,
Yeah.
shake the hand of a fraudster and they're using other social engineering techniques,
Yeah.
age-old ones. So, personally, I think we are actually going to go deeper into having to use different digital technology tools, encryptions, tokens, certificates, challenge response, those kinds of things.
So I have a unique
More.
QR code assigned to me that nobody can have access to or something.
Yes, yes, right. I've got, we're using an encryption or a validation or a certificate
Yeah.
protocol, and only you have the private key, so now I can validate this really is that person.
That would be
It
funny,
can't just be a web page URL, right, anymore.
Yeah, and
So,
that would
we're
be
gonna have
funny
to
in a
change.
video call. So before we say hello, hi, my name is this, and my QR code XYZ, and what's your authentic?
Well, think
Yeah.
about it. It may actually be easier because if Zoom, right, or whatever tool that you're using, when people log in, is as part of it, they have to prove that authentication, right, through a challenge response, an asymmetric, encryption or a token or a certificate, and it automatically validates that.
Interesting thought.
Right? It comes up on your screen and you may see a list of attendees, but some of them have a little key on it or a check mark or something like that, that you now know the system has done a digital verification on them, a high, degree of confidence and, validness that you can trust it's a real person.
You know,
We're not there yet.
you might
We're
end up
not there
wearing,
yet.
yeah, but yeah, you might end up wearing those badges. I am real, or I am.
No, what's even worse will be the day when we actually prefer it to be this synthetic one, because then they'll summarize it and they'll capture everything and they'll pay attention, right? They won't walk away on a call. They won't be doing something else. They'll listen to every word. So at some point we will evolve to a state that we will actually prefer your digital agent who will gather everything pertinent to you, summarize it specifically for the key points that you need, right? And that way you will get the attention that's required.
So
So, oh,
interesting.
we will not stop evolving. That's
Yeah.
the thing. This is always a moving target.
Correct.
What we
Correct.
see as a detriment today will be a benefit tomorrow.
Correct. And
And we're just
evolution,
not
I
there yet.
mean, this evolution is moving much, much more rapidly, right? So
Oh yeah.
previously it would take a century to get to some place. Now it just takes decades or 5 years or half a decade even. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
millennials, typically 40, 45 years, people have seen cassette players or Walkmans to AI, right? So that's in just 40, 45 years. And
Mm-hmm.
it's crazy the way things are moving now. So you never know what's gonna, what April 2027 going to look like. So,
Yeah.
very hard to predict now. So
And we see that technology curve, right? I mean, we've got the
correct.
Artemis missions
Yeah,
that's currently in space now.
yeah,
And most people don't realize the vast amount of history of mankind we couldn't fly, right? It really wasn't until the Wright
yeah.
brothers got it right. And there at Kitty Hawk Field, when the Wright brothers took off, to the point that we landed on the moon was 60 something years.
True.
But for the 800,000 years prior to that, we couldn't even
We
be in the
didn't fly.
sky. And so we went for 800,000 years, couldn't even be in the air. And then 60 something years after that, we were standing on the moon.
No,
I mean,
absolutely.
that's compression. We
That's
see
yeah.
that all the time, and we're experiencing
That's
it now
that's the
with
better
AI.
analogy than my cassette player. So yeah, but absolutely. You're right. AI
Imagine what the next 60 years
was
will
the next
be.
experience look like. Absolutely. No, I agree. I agree. All right. So last question, and for leaders listening today, what's your advice for making sure that their AI systems that they're now, a lot of organizations are trying to actively adopt, embed into their workflows, their process, giving access to data, are actually secure and not only just working? What would be a couple of things that you would, kind of give them advice on?
Yeah, nobody's gonna like this answer. And let me predicate it by saying we've touched on a lot of reasons why, right? The
Yeah,
rapid
correct.
speed, the desire for functionality over security, all those kinds of things. My advice is to assume that it is not secure, that it is not trustworthy. Start from that point. No matter, what the vendor is saying, hey, we red team this, or hey, we put it in a VM. Just assume it's not secure or trustworthy. We start from that point and then think about how we limit the damage.
Yeah.
Goes back to the fundamentals, right? We want to limit that exposure. We only want to give permissions for what that agent needs. We only want to expose the limited amount of sensitive data that's required, right? Start putting in controls, and we call it governance.
Yeah.
Start putting in those guardrails to help minimize damage, because if you start out expecting, hey, this is not secure, then you get to a point of going, okay, we know we need this and we need to move forward. How do I manage the risk? I'm not trying to eliminate it. I can't do that, but I want to manage that risk, right, to an acceptable level while we continue to support moving forward. And it
Awesome.
goes back to that example, right? You don't give the intern on their first day full administrative rights to the world, to your digital world, and keys to the safe
To
that
the
has all the
kingdom.
cash. You don't do that.
Yeah.
But over time, you start to expand slowly, right? What access they have, where they should be able to go, and what they should be able to do. AI is absolutely no different. It is that intern that's going to help you, but you can't give it total control, not in the beginning.
Got it.
Rationalize, figure out what it needs. Guardrails, governance, controls, but let's move fast so that we continue to get the value that's needed. We need to support that rapid adoption. We just have to move faster in security.
All right. Awesome advice. I think that's really, really good. So assume it's unprotected, it's unsafe, start from there. Do not give access to everything, treat it that way and back to the basics. So all right, great advice. Matthew, it's been a pleasure having you on Tech Unhinged. We really appreciate your time and your candor. I loved the energy for the podcast today and I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely my pleasure.